Well, good morning, and welcome to At the Round Table with Mammoth. I'm your host, Larry Ellison, and I am back live and in living color. Pastor Hobbs, it's good to be back in the seat.
Yeah, good to have you back.
I know, a little hiatus, actually, just momentarily. Actually, family commitments
Absolutely.
really take precedent, and they
Absolutely.
will always
Respect
take
that.
precedent. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So I will be in today, and actually I will be traveling next weekend, so I will not be on the air. I may do a remote because I'm heading down to Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
So maybe we can talk about what Trump has done while he was down there this past. He was there yesterday.
Okay.
So maybe we'll do something, get a guest host, and we'll call in live and report on
Sure.
what's going on down there, live,
That
remote,
sounds great.
right from the south,
Wow.
from the deep south. But again, good morning, Pastor Osmond. Thank you for coming. I don't know how you. It's tough enough, getting up at 6 o'clock, right? And you're on the air at 4 a.m. right here.
5 on Saturday.
Okay.
Sunday and Wednesday's 4.
Oh wow, okay. Either 5 is not it's not much better, but you look like you just got out of GQ magazine.
You're
as
kind.
usual.
You are
So-
kind.
so,
To God be the
yeah,
glory, man.
I thank you. And with that said, if you don't mind, sir, a little prayer. We definitely need prayer.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Father God, we do bless you. We honor you. We give you praise. We give you glory. We're grateful for your grace, for your mercy, for another day you've led us to be in the land of the living. And we give you praise for that, Father. We thank you that this is the day that you made, and we choose to rejoice and be glad. And we're grateful that you've already redeemed us from the curse of the law of sin and of death. Nevertheless, we live, yet not us, the old man, but you live by faith in us, respectively, that your word dwells in us richly, that we're blessed, that we're healed, we're delivered, that we're set free, and sickness cannot dwell in us. The number of our days you'll fulfill because you're in us and we are in you. And by faith, we already have the abundant life and the victory that you provide. Therefore, no weapon, though they be formed against us, will prosper. And every tongue that rises up against us in judgment, we're grateful that we have the authority to condemn. And this is the heritage of us, the servants of you. And as the redeemed of Jesus the Christ, we declare and we decree this to be so. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. That's very powerful. I want to remind the Mamleo membership that today is the annual, the general membership monthly meeting at 12 o'clock today at Mamleo headquarters at 61 Columbia Road. Again, the general membership meeting takes place today at 12 p.m. I'm thinking about your time clock. 12 p.m. at Mamleo at 61 Columbia Road, right there, Columbia Road and Seaver Street. I'm sure for those who haven't been there that your the GPS should bring you to the corner of Seaver and Columbia Road. Stop in, information there. A lot going on there with our new president, Eddie Crispin, and our vice president, Louis Cruz. Would love to see you in the place. Again, the general membership meeting today at 12 p.m. I want to thank Commissioner Gross on his recent promotions this past week. He had a busy week of promoting folks there to in the Boston Police Department. I want to special congratulations to a few folks who are friends of mine. I should say, Superintendent Jeffrey Walcott was promoted from deputy to superintendent. Sergeant Courtney Matthews was promoted. Sergeant Detective Courtney Matthews was promoted from Sergeant Detective to deputy superintendent. Congratulations, sir. And it's kind of weird how things are because Deputy Louis Cruz, he was demoted back to his rank of lieutenant and then promoted to captain and then promoted back to deputy superintendent.
Wow.
I know, of the Boston Police Department. It's amazing how this works. Also, lieutenant detective, from lieutenant to lieutenant detective, Marwan Moss, and from detective, from patrolman to detective, J.P. Lamontes, and from patrolman to detective, Luis Años, who is actually the vice president of Mamleo, to the position of detective. Congratulations to them all. And also I wanted to send out congratulations. There's another one is he's a deputy superintendent, Felipe Colon, who was demoted back to his rank of sergeant, then promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and that will be his civil service rank, and then promoted back to deputy superintendent. So congratulations as well to Deputy Superintendent Felipe Colon for being promoted to a civil service rank of lieutenant. I know it's kind of hard to follow, folks, but these civil service positions are ones that can never be taken from these folks without just cause. The other ones are appointed positions, and we all inside know how those go sometimes. So they do have an expiration date, but those civil service appointments and those appointments to detectives are theirs. They've actually taken exams to get to those. So congratulations to and to all the others. There was just so many that I don't have the list in front of me. These are the ones that I can recall from the top of my head. So I say hearty congratulations on behalf of our president, Eddie Crispin, to all of those promoted this week in the Boston Police Department. And I want to send a special shout out. They also held at the service. The promotional ceremony was the acknowledgement of the retirement of Lieutenant Detective Eric Eversley after 42 years with the Boston Police Department. Lieutenant Eversley retired. It was such a warm ceremony there with him and his family. He was very emotional about it. He's someone who's loved this job, and I can honestly say that I've never seen him where he was not in with a smile on his face, his whole thing calling folks young warriors, but treated people with respect, to someone that I've always looked up to and respected, and someone who's always willing to reach out and say, hey, how can I help you? Not just as a boss, but as a human being. So again, congratulations on 42 years with the Boston Police Department. You will be missed, sir, and we love you, and we appreciate all you've done for us as well as for the citizens of the city of Boston. Oh, Pastor Hobbs. So what's been going on in the city here? I know a lot has been taking place here, but I don't know if were you able to get that video I sent you?
Oh, no.
So, folks, Pastor Hobbs is going to cue up a video, but I always try to find stuff that brings a historical piece, because for those who don't know and should know, there is an election in the city of Boston on Tuesday, November 5th, right? And folks need to come out and vote, regardless of who you vote for. We never tell you who to vote for here, right? All we say is that you should vote. Tuesday is the election for the city councilors at large, as well as the city councilors in the districts. So, let's not repeat this abysmal turnout that took place in the primaries back in September. It was embarrassing. Less than 11% across the city, and the communities of color somewhere hovering around 5%. 5%. That'd be good if you had your money in the bank, or if you had a bond and you were getting 5% on your investment. But to elect people to office and want to hold them accountable with less than 5%, it's not going to happen. It's not going to make a difference. You do have an opportunity to turn that around. If you're not paying attention to what's going on around the country and saying that elections don't matter, they don't have consequences, you're really living underground somewhere, and you have no communications. But with all the communication that's available to people today, there is no reason that people aren't educating themselves on these candidates and not just going on name recognition or, oh, I remember that person. Well, what is it that they've done that's so momentous that you want to go and cast your vote for them? So if you can recall it, go ahead and do it. But if you don't have any good reason for voting for a candidate, that's on you. You can vote for whomever you want, but I think you should do your homework, because it's important that you're voting properly and for the right people. With that being said, Pastor Hobbs, there's a piece he's gonna play. Most folks, I don't know if you even are aware of it. It was called Reverse Freedom Ride. Are you aware of that? Have you heard about that?
I haven't.
It's very interesting. When you get to, just let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
So back, we had the Freedom Riders who back in the little history here. Would come up to try to get people registered to vote, would come up and be advocating for the end of racism and desegregation, segregation up north and around the country. And what some folks thought it would be a good idea was to try to trick folks in reverse and tell them that they had all these promises and opportunities if they headed up north, and they got them bus tickets and put them on, and they sent them up to places like the Kennedy compound, and these folks had no idea that there was no one waiting to receive them, and that these stories and lies that were told to them were not true, and that there was no pot of gold or anything that was going to be availed to them once they got here, and they were stuck literally with no place to go, not even the funds to get back home.
I have it, but for some reason I don't. There's an audio too. Is there an audio?
There's an audio. Yes. If you scroll down there, in there.
Oh, okay. I think I see it.
Yeah, and just click on that.
This is WGBH's Morning Edition. The Freedom Rides in the early 1960s were a monumental event in the civil rights movement when black and white activists traveled through the South, their goal to integrate Greyhound buses. But what came the next summer has largely been forgotten when Southern segregationists retaliated with the reverse Freedom Rides. They were even considered by some to be an urban legend. But WGBH News has spent several months digging through archives, finding reels of old TV footage and locating those in Massachusetts whose lives were defined by it. WGBH Radio's Gabriela Emanuel has the first of a two-part series on the reverse Freedom Rides.
In 1962, late on a Wednesday afternoon, a Greyhound bus arrived in Hyannis, Massachusetts. The doors opened at the bus stop closest to the Kennedy compound. Lela Mae Williams and her 9 youngest children stepped onto the pavement. Silent TV footage captured the moment. In the recording, Lela Mae looks immaculate despite a 3-day journey from Arkansas. She's wearing a black shiny dress, a triple string of pearls, white high heels. She is dressed to meet the Kennedys.
She had been promised she was going to the Kennedys, where the Kennedys lived at. She was going to have a job and she was going to be able to support her family.
It was all a scam, all a hoax, and it was just to embarrass the Kennedys, embarrass the president.
Mickey and Betty Williams are 2 of Lela Mae's children. Now in their 60s and 70s and living in the Boston area, they were 5 and 18 when the family became reverse Freedom Riders. They were convinced or tricked by white segregationists into boarding a northbound bus.
When they put us on that bus and they brought us to the Kennedy compound, they was almost saying to the Kennedys, here you go, here's, calling them, here you go, here they are.
The Kennedys were not there to welcome the Williams family. There was no permanent housing as had been promised, no jobs. In 1962, Lela Mae Williams and about 200 other African Americans were simply dropped in northern cities. They were pawns in a segregationist game. It all started the year before, when segregationists like Ned Touchstone were incensed by the Freedom Rides.
Sending down busloads of people here with express purpose of violating our laws, fomenting confusion, trying to destroy 100 years of workable tradition and good relations between the races.
Touchstone joined George Singleman and others in answering the Freedom Rides with the reverse Freedom Rides. They'd use the same weapon, the Greyhound bus, and send African Americans north. Then they'd see if the North liked it when blacks were in their backyard.
The ultimate accomplishment, of course, is to focus attention on the hypocrisy of the northern liberals.
The ploy to expose the North's racism grabbed headlines around the world, and Singleman was often on TV.
They have been crying the sing-song in behalf of the Negroes throughout the nation. And of course, now when it comes time for them to put up or shut up, they have shut up.
Singleman orchestrated the reverse Freedom Rides through local segregationist groups called citizens' councils. They were basically
the Ku Klux Klan without the hoods and the masks.
Clive Webb is at the University of Sussex in England. He says he's the type of historian who wants to wash his hands after he's been in the archives. He specializes in studying racists. He says the citizens' councils attempted to cloak segregation in respectability.
They could be members of the police force, they could be bankers, businessmen, and their like.
Local chapters bought bus tickets and fanned out across the South to enlist black riders.
They targeted people who were either welfare recipients or prison inmates, people who were placing a burden, as they saw it, on public resources.
The vision had been to send thousands north, But the reality was far smaller. Several hundred African Americans, mostly from Arkansas and Louisiana, accepted the northbound tickets. They went to New York, New Hampshire, Los Angeles, Idaho, the list goes on. The largest number, nearly 100, went to the Kennedys' summer White House in Hyannisport. That was far, far away from the Williams home in rural Arkansas. Betty and Mickey Williams remember growing up in Arkansas as both idyllic and tragic. There was the joy of fishing in the pond out back and the trauma of relatives dying without a doctor to visit.
I remember the flooding in the house, snakes underneath the beds. I mean, that's how we were poor. We were really poor.
At the time, Arkansas was segregated, and the Williams family was confined to the black side of town. Betty says she didn't know anyone who was white.
Never thought about why we separated like this, why we can't go to school together, why we can't sit and eat together. I never even questioned that.
She didn't question it, but her mother was aware of the forces that swirled outside of their 3-room house.
My dad always had 3 pictures on the wall growing up in the South. John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy.
My mother was very much a Kennedy person, very much.
The Kennedys were seen as being sympathetic to African Americans, even though they were sometimes slow to move on issues of civil rights. While Martin Luther King Jr. spoke out against the reverse freedom rides, the warning never made it to the Williams family.
My mom thought when she came to the North, she was going to have a better life for her children, better jobs, better housing, better everything for all of us.
Everything turned out to be nothing. One account from the time suggests it wasn't only empty promises. Some segregationists threatened to take families off the welfare rolls if they didn't board the buses. Betty and Mickey Williams only learned after their mother's death that their family's journey was part of a larger scheme. They don't know if she was coaxed or coerced, but they do know their mother was grasping for anything that might help her children.
Everything that a mom could do, everything within her power, everything within her reach, my mom did it.
According to a newspaper from the time, Lela Mae Williams told the segregationists that she couldn't take her children north until they finished the school year. Class let out on a Friday. On Sunday, segregationist Amos Guthridge sent a car to pick up Lela Mae and her 9 youngest kids, ages 2 to 14. Guthridge drove them from the family house 150 miles to Little Rock's bus terminal. On their way, they stopped and Guthridge treated the kids to ice cream and root beer.
They arrived in his station wagon. All of them kind of jammed into this station wagon.
Ernie Dumas was, at the time, a reporter for the Arkansas Gazette. Guthridge had told the local news outlets that he'd be having a press conference.
And so when he was there, he made a little grinning speech. Now these fine, fine people, this wonderful woman and her fine little children.
Guthridge paused, and Dumas says he thinks he saw Guthridge wink at his fellow segregationists.
We're going to send them up to Massachusetts, and the Kennedys and those fine people up there are going to take care of them and give them a better life.
In silent TV footage, Lela Mae is focused. The kids are giddy. One plays with a well-loved rabbit stuffed animal. The family has almost no luggage. Everything was going to be taken care of. Lela Mae Williams herds her children onto the bus, toward the back of the bus, and then onward toward a promise that was a lie. Gabriela Emanuel, WGBH, Boston's local and PR.
All right, so here you have it, folks. You're listening. This is part 1 of the Reverse Freedom Ride. You know, like I said, I was not aware of this, and that's why I say history is so important, right? Without history, there is a mystery, right? As it's Pastor Hobbs, he said he had not heard of this, right? And it's just amazing what folks had to go through, right? And in some ways we still go through, but back then it was a lot more difficult to do some of the things we take for granted today, right? I mean, that they were traveling all this way for a better life, things they could do, and all we have to do is probably travel a couple of blocks to vote, right? To maybe, hopefully, that will put people in office that will afford us a better life or work with us towards that, and we won't even do that. 617-282-0685, 617-282-0685. You're listening to At the Round Table with Mammon. We're talking about an NPR story recently aired, Reverse Freedom Rides. You know, your comments, your questions. Were you aware of such a thing, right? We know we all heard of the Freedom Rides, but I, like most people, did not know there was a reverse freedom ride in which they promised folks that a ride up north. As a matter of fact, they told them the Kennedys were going to take care of them as some type of cruel joke to say, hey, Kennedys, you want these folks? Here they are. You take care of them. It's just, folks, this is not any different from when you listen to the current occupant in the White House there today talking about sending people back, and this is his version of making America great again. So folks, I say to folks, what are you going to do? Are you going to take a stand and say, I'm not going to be on the reverse bus, right, heading back somewhere, sitting here in limbo, not knowing what, if anything, I'm going to do to take care of my family? These folks got on this bus believing that they were heading to a better life, and there was nothing there for them except disappointment, confusion, and no help whatsoever. And I think it also goes to show, sometimes you can only depend on yourself. There's a second part here that I want to play Pastor Haas whenever he's ready to cue it up, part 2 of this interview, because I think it's so important. We want to make sure that we also acknowledge history here on this broadcast. Yeah, there's current events, but we really, I think, can't deal with the current events until we deal with the past and the understanding of why things continue to go on.
This is WGBH's Morning Edition. Nearly 60 years ago, segregationists in the South launched a scheme to send African Americans to communities up north. The largest number went to Cape Cod. They were called the Reverse Freedom Riders, and their journey has been almost entirely forgotten. But after months of sifting through archival documents, tracking down those impacted by the scheme, WGBH Radio's Gabriela Emanuel has the second of our 2 stories on what happened after the Reverse Freedom Riders arrived in Hyannis, and how historians see echoes of this past in America's present.
In May 1962, a crowd gathered in Hyannis, awaiting a Greyhound bus. Off stepped the first reverse freedom rider, David Harris. In a suit and tie, he was a 43-year-old African-American Army veteran. He'd been sent by Southern segregationists to the bus stop closest to the Kennedy compound. In the months to come, the spectators disappeared, but the Greyhound buses kept arriving.
The first question that most of the arrivals asked was, where is President Kennedy? We were told that he was going to meet us at the bus.
The president didn't meet them, but Margaret Mosley did. In archival tape, the late Mosley, who lived in Hyannis, remembers that summer.
Most of the people who came had only a shopping bag with perhaps one change of clothing, no money, knowing nobody.
What they did know was that they'd been given a free bus ticket. They'd been promised that jobs and housing were waiting, and the Kennedys would be there to help. It was all a lie. Many of the reverse freedom riders were single mothers with lots of children. 8 kids, 9 kids, 11 kids. Mosley remembers one of the kids asking,
where are the cotton fields? I said, we have no cotton fields here. He said, well, what am I going to do to find employment? I can chop cotton. I don't know how to do anything else.
Mosley had recently helped found the local chapter of the NAACP, and she'd fought civil rights battles her whole life. But as she neared her death in 1997, she said she still remembered the reverse freedom rides with a shudder.
It was one of the most inhuman things that I have ever seen.
If it takes 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 5 or 10 years, we will continue it till the white people up there tell those politicians we are through with this foolishness about civil rights and things that you're using for political purposes.
That's segregationist Amos Guthridge of Arkansas in a TV interview from 1962. He helped organize the reverse freedom rides in retaliation for the freedom rides, where civil rights activists the summer before had traveled throughout the South to integrate bus terminals and seating on buses. The idea of the reverse freedom rides was simple. When large numbers of African Americans show up on Northerners' doorsteps, the North would not be able to accommodate them. They would not want them.
We're going to find out if people like Mr. Ted Kennedy and the Kennedys, all of them, really do have an interest in the Negro people, really do have a love for the Negro and a desire to help him.
It was a test a test the North was meant to fail. But by some measures, it backfired. A handful of ordinary people in Hyannis worked hard to help the Southern families. And the callousness of the segregationists was obvious. Many Southerners worried it was hurting their image. The scheme ended a handful of months after it began, struggling to find funds and recruit riders. But even when it was over, those families were still 1,000 miles from home.
It has been like a struggle, a really hard struggle.
Betty Williams was 18 and 8 months pregnant when she became a reverse freedom rider. Now 75 and living in the Boston area, she still thinks back to that summer when segregationists in Arkansas sent her family north, and when a small group of Hyannis residents were ready to receive them. Religious leaders and the NAACP convinced the local community college to open its dorms, and the nearby Air Force Base to open its barracks. The local jail provided bedding.
They all was very nice to my mother. They was nice to my family.
But despite the welcome, Betty says things weren't easy.
I remember I used to go out and I used to never smile that much. I never smiled. I don't know why that was. I never smiled.
While the Williams family was adjusting, the country was debating. Some compared the reverse freedom rides to Nazis deporting the Jews. Others delighted in watching the North squirm. But the Kennedy family largely tried to avoid the topic. President John F. Kennedy was asked about it.
Do you have any comment on the so-called reverse freedom rides?
Yes, well, I think it's a rather cheap exercise in, this country, people moving every day by the thousands, 25% of our...
He hemmed and hawed and ended up saying the South shouldn't be defined by the reverse freedom rides. But it did define the Williams family. Like many of those sent to Hyannis, the Williams family moved to Boston in search of work. Things they'd never experienced in their tiny southern town began to define their lives. Drugs, jail, neighbors who didn't know or care about them. And then there were things that were familiar. Racism. In Boston, the Williams children experienced the worst of the school busing crisis. Betty says she watched her mother mourn.
Tried with every ounce of strength that she had to try to hold this family together. She used to just cry. She used to just cry.
As for the next generation, many are still learning the details of the story. Jamal Williams, one of Betty's sons, says he's been struck by just how hard his grandmother and mother fought for a better life.
To see the things that they've gone through and see the joy and happiness that they still possess is amazing.
It's something he tries to remember when he sees divisions within the country become inflamed. Historian Clive Webb of the University of Sussex in England says for him, some of today's politics are reminiscent of the reverse freedom rides.
In 1962, what was happening was the actions of a political fringe group. And in 2019, it's the federal government.
Mr. President, can you tell us your plans about sanctuary cities and illegal migrants that you tweeted about? Well,
President Trump's idea of putting undocumented immigrants on buses and dropping them off in so-called sanctuary cities made Webb think back to segregationists like Amos Guthridge in 1962.
They want more people in their sanctuary cities. Well, we'll give them more people. We can give them a lot. We can give them an unlimited supply.
We're going to find out if people like Mr. Ted Kennedy and the Kennedys, all of them, really do have an interest in the Negro people, really do have a love for the Negro, and a desire to help him.
And let's see if they're so happy. They say we have open arms. They're always saying they have open arms. Let's see if they have open arms.
While there's not evidence the Trump administration has enacted the policy, the president told a rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin, that he was implementing the plan.
I'm proud to tell you that was actually my sick idea, but as far as...
But Clive Webb says, remember.
The white conservatives who were behind that campaign then actually underestimated the decency of many ordinary people.
And the reverse freedom riders showed just how long the ripple effects can last and how resilient their families can be. Gabriela Emanuel, WGBH, Boston's local and PR.
Series is edited by...
Wow. I'm watching your expression of this, right? And then when they piece together the comments from the current occupant of the
Yes.
White House, right?
Yeah.
And back then, right? And that's why I say if you don't understand history, it has a way of repeating itself,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Because and I've heard it, so I'm watching because I want to take in your intake on this, right? And I want to get your opinion, your feelings, and your take on what you just heard. But I want to give a special shout out. I see there that my cousin Rashida Clark is on the Facebook there sharing this. So thank you, cuz. I appreciate it. Up early in the morning. I guess that's I'm not the only one in the family that's up before the crack of dawn. So good morning, cuz. You're listening to At the Round Table with Ma'am Leo. 617-282-0685 617-282-0685. Folks, if the reason why we try to find pieces like this and share them with you, this history, because it is very eerily familiar to what we're saying today. I mean, they took the words from segregationists back then and said, hey, we'll put on a bus. If you want it, we'll send them to you. It's the same thing going here with immigration. So, folks, don't be fooled. And who are there trying to help? There were a lot of good people, right? And it wasn't just black people. It was people in general, black, white. That's why I said they underestimated. And I think that's what's happening again today with this whole thing that folks think is that the occupant in the White House can get away with anything that he wants. He says, I can go and shoot some. That there are good people. And they're going to turn out, whether or not the Republicans will try to ignore what's going on here in this country with this occupant. The good people in this country will not. And whether or not they do their job during this hearing and ignore the facts, I think come next November, the good people in this country will do their job.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's important. So, Pastor Hobbs, what's your take on it?
I mean, I don't even have the words, quite candidly. It's scary, quite candidly, and very sobering to be able to hear just how it's the same. I mean, to hear President Trump articulate what he said in the context of this, it's exactly the same.
Right. He says, it was his sick idea.
Yeah.
So even he acknowledges that it's not normal, right?
Absolutely.
That it's a sick idea. And back then, in the piece with the politician there, he called civil rights foolishness.
Yeah. Yeah. Same mindset. I just want to acknowledge some of the folks who are on
absolutely.
Facebook Live. So Phyllis Leslie saying Grand Rising, Ma'am Leo family. G.J.L. Finch is saying so very true, my friend. And Luciano Sereno is saying good morning. And Betty Collier is saying blessings, Larry and Franklin, godly sons. Ken Russell, good morning from Washington, D.C. Always a pleasure.
And good morning to all, and thank you for tuning in. I know you could be doing anything this morning, relaxing, sleeping a little bit more, and so we appreciate getting in. And that's why we want to make sure that we're respectful of your time and trying to give you something that hopefully will have you thinking for the rest of the day. Because I don't know many days I've sat in this seat and Pastor Hobbs has been speechless. You talk for a living, right? But there are some things that because they make you think.
Yeah.
And I hope that this makes people think. And the reason why I chose this weekend is because we have an election on Tuesday, right? Yeah. And like I said, civil rights is a foolishness. And then you listen to when they put those pieces in parallel on what segregationists were talking about back then and what this current occupant of the White House, the president, is saying today, they're very similar. And that's his version of making America great again, right? Putting folks on buses and getting them out. We've seen this with other groups of folks, and I tell folks, listen, Hitler started this craziness, right? We did it to the Japanese, we internment camps, and so there is a history in this country of looking at people just because of who they are and attacking them and saying we've got to get rid of them, right? It doesn't work. You look at countries that have dictators as leaders, it doesn't work. It didn't work in the Soviet Union, Germany. A lot of those places have collapsed, right? And we may unfortunately have to go through that. But I mean, shame on folks for sitting back and allowing it to take place without at least putting up a fight.
It's true. It's true. It's really sad to hear so many people that either one are registered to vote, as you said, but don't actually show up, and or as we did some voting registration and absentee ballot at the Suffolk County House of Correction, and I'm so grateful for the people who actually took time to be able to fill out the absentee ballot application and seize their opportunity to exercise their right to vote. But many folks who did not and don't understand that this is, some places you lose your right to vote forever if you've been convicted of a crime, even a misdemeanor. And so here in Massachusetts, where you can vote if you're not presently serving a felony conviction, and even with the infrastructure not being in place, the fact that we are going in and trying to facilitate our returning citizens being civically engaged, it's just unfortunate for those who would say, and those who are incarcerated and those who are outside who simply say, it's not important. When you hear these kind of things,
right, and that's the point. See, you get it. You know, I was saying, and I said it here before, and I'll keep saying, and it's really changing my mindset on my help in giveaways. I'll call them, right, because I said I drove by the Mattapan police station the other night. I was actually up there, and I mean, they had the Halloween party, and Pastor Hobbs, you couldn't get anywhere near the place. I mean, there was so many families out there with their kids. And don't get me wrong, that's good to see these families together.
Sure.
But because they were giving away candy, and I'm like, wow, wouldn't it be great and amazing to see that many people standing in line, waiting in line to vote next Tuesday, right? Probably more people were at that Halloween party that cast a vote in the primaries in September. That's sad.
It's very sad.
You know, and the networking that went on, right, for folks to tell, hey, they're having a holiday, whether they will reach out and tell folks where the free stuff is, right?
True.
You know, they're giving away. You better get up here. You better get up here and bring everybody. You know, right? How quickly that will circulate, right?
Right.
But then if you go to those same folks' social media and see if they're sending out anything about information or today's a vote, you know, people say, well, the city doesn't put out any. You know what? I didn't see one billboard, right? I didn't see one of those
sandwich boards,
thank you, out there announcing B3 was having a Halloween party. Not one. There may have been a few, but not one.
You're right.
No public service announcement.
You're right.
No, nothing in the newspaper.
How about that?
Nothing broadcast on the news, local or national, that they were having this Halloween party. But yet, thousands of people showed up to the Halloween party. And yet, thousands of people do not show up for the elections. You know, I have a problem with that. You know, and folks in the community should have a problem with that. And until everyone has that problem, we're going to continue to have the representation that we do, which is not much. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the round table. Hello?
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I'm hearing the feedback.
Okay, you should be okay now. Go ahead. You should be okay now. Do you still hear feedback?
Yes. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, bro.
Yes. I would hope when you were playing a few minutes ago that Dan Walker can hear some of what you were playing. I just wanted to put that out there really quick.
Okay. For those who don't, T. Michael, for those who don't know, Dan Walker is someone who I have the utmost respect for and love for. I totally disagree with his political views on things, right? But he's entitled to them. But Dan hosts a show here on Sound Travels here on the Boston Praise Radio on Wednesdays at 8 a.m. I'm going to give him a plug because he's not our competition. I think it's healthy to have these conversations. I have them with him all the time. I'm in disagreement with him probably 99% of the time. So I just wanted to let folks know who Dan Walker was. But go ahead, T. Mike. I apologize. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, no worries. A couple of things. We're working on a memorial piece to symbolize and to acknowledge the pain and suffering for folks in our community. So the mayor suggests that we do a showing at City Hall of the Peace before it goes out into community to have a permanent location. Also, we've been setting up workshops so far, I believe, in 4 locations, whereas family members, loved ones who has lost someone, etc., we will work with them, the People's Academy, to make a copper leaf. It's all part of the therapy to attach at the base of it. And if they so choose, whether we make it or they make it, it's better if they do, that it will be part of the permanent sculpture / memorial piece. So that's something that I would like sometime to come in the show in the near future to talk about, to introduce in full, disclosure on what it is. And hopefully this time around, our community and our folks will actually be acknowledged on the pain and suffering on what they've endured.
Well, T. Michael, I'm going to throw this out there. You don't have to commit to it now. I was telling Pastor Hobbs before, I'm going to be away next weekend. I'd be willing to turn over the broadcast to you for that morning, and then you can talk about whatever you want, the People's Academy, what's going on with that. Use it for whatever time you think you need to get folks engaged with what the process that you're doing. So, like I said, just keep that in the back of your mind. But I wanted to just ask you, because did you listen to the broadcast, those 2 segments there?
Yes, I did. To some of it, for the most part of it, I did.
Okay, so what's your take on that? How did that? Your reaction to that, I guess, is a better word.
Well, I have to compare everything to the People's Academy, and the reason I'm saying this is, what they were misled, we continue to be misled, and the People's Academy is providing a way out of poverty and providing a way to create opportunity and employment. And the system will support everything else but to better, especially black and brown people. And I wanted to say something really quick.
Sure.
I saw Michael Moore did a segment recently, a little documentary in Canada, and they spoke about, they interviewed Canadians, and they spoke about how when we in America have an issue, the first thing we do is pick up a gun to resolve the issue. One of the mayors over there said, why is the system, why is the government continuing to give the different breaks and the support to the haves but not the have-nots? So it's a similar thing, in a sense.
Well,
It misled us.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, that's what I wanted to say.
But, first, I want to thank you. There are people like yourself, and I'm going to include Mary Franklin in this as well, right? And regardless to whether people, what they think about you, right, and your advocacy, and Mary and her advocacy for unsolved murders, for Trauma Squad, right, whether people like you guys, one thing you can say about you folks, you have grit, right? And you have been laser focused on your mission, on your cause, and you have let no one, the 2 of you have let no one deter you from that, right? It is front and center in every conversation you have. And I commend you guys for that, because there are very few people who have the commitment and the courage to stand for something when most people won't support them on it, even when it's in their best interest. That takes guts, right? It also takes this determination that you don't see in folks. And if you 2 can fight as hard as you do for your causes, right? And there are others like BG, but I mean, I'm just coming because these are grassroots movements to help others. And yet folks will sit on the sideline and not support what you're doing to help themselves. I don't understand it, T. Michael. I don't get it. But yet we can turn out in droves for some candy.
Yes. Or a celebration or a carnival. And that's the thing that I'm always questioned by potential supporters, folks from outside of our community. They're saying to me, you want us to support you to support those individuals who aren't even supporting you to help them.
Right. Well, but not even. You're right. I mean, because they think they're doing you a favor, right? But you're actually trying to put something in place to help them, and they won't even help themselves. But once you get this up and going, and you will, they'll be lying because now they can benefit from it. They don't want to do any of the hard work that needs to get done to help again. Like I watch Mary Franklin, and I watch her one-woman show trying to get this trauma spa up and going. Spending countless days, no pay, no help, or very little help, I should say, disrespect, right? And then the community will sit back and they'll be lined up to come by and get a pedicure, to get a massage, right? To benefit from the work of someone else. We have to stop being so selfish.
Correct. Wanted to add to what you're saying with the People's Academy. All we're saying is, what about a phone call, sending an email to say to the mayor, to the city, to the elected official, to the leadership, this program is creating opportunities, jobs, sustainable, needed jobs, shovel ready.
Right.
Not to come out of your pocket, but hey, call the mayor's hotline, send in an email and say, hey, this is a benefit to the community. If you don't believe us, take a look. See for yourself. What's so hard about that? Simple.
How long have you been operating this program out of your home?
Over 15 years.
And at a considerable cost. What would you say that the loss of income that you could have brought into your home, you know, with today's markets here in Boston, how much do you think you've lost
on the apartment alone?
Yes.
I would say over $300,000.
Over $300,000, right?
Yeah.
And folks,
just on the apartment space alone, not how with the compensation for the students' salaries or materials or equipment, things like that.
And that time,
that's not included.
That time that you give of yourself, because I've been over to the People's Academy, folks who haven't really need to go, take you up on your invitation. And if I think anyone that sees it doesn't think it's a worthwhile program, I just don't know what to say, because you could be out with your skills and your talent. I've seen the things that you've been able to put together. You could be making money and not be worrying about whether or not somebody, you already have the trade, the skill, the ability to do these things, right? To make a living, a very good living from your skill. And you are willing to take the time to train others, right? So that they can be in that same category as you. This is not about you. This is about others. And that's the part that really bothers me, that folks are not trying to support helping the common man. And I say man, I mean that gender neutral.
Well, Larry, to take it to add to that once again, if this program, People's Academy, was not a program of value, then why did Eden's Development have us contracted us? Look outside the 110 Grill, the copper canopies. Look outside the Boston Convention Center now, Lawn and Deep. They're paying us. We're doing a copper sculpture. It's still in.
Yeah. No, I said we've got a couple of minutes, but we got another caller that wants to join in this conversation. I think they want to add to. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable.
Good morning, Larry Ellison and T. Michaels.
Good morning,
caller.
Good morning,
Bob's and family. I'm just calling to wish you all a great day, and thank you, each of you, for your wonderful work. And thank you particularly for reminding people that, ready or not, Tuesday, November 5th, is Election Day.
Yes, sir.
And if you stay home, you're leaving the decisions to someone else who may not even have your best interest at heart or even know you exist. So please, get out and vote on Tuesday. It's a very important municipal election. You're electing your city council, the 4 at-large positions in 9 districts. And I know the media hasn't focused on it, but that's no good excuse to stay home. Again, City of Boston spends more than $3.3 billion of your tax dollars. It employs more than 18,000 people who educate your children, who provide protection, who provide fire services and employ people like Larry Ellison who really do care about you. So I'm just asking the public to get out. But I also want to, in light of some of the earlier discussions, thank MAMLIO in particular for supporting the annual Charles C. Yancey, there's my name again, a little bit of a plug there, book fair. And we, as Larry Ellison will tell you, we would have thousands of participants every year to receive books and to participate in that event, which would not have been a success without the help of MAMLIO for so many of those years. So I want to say thank you for that. And I call upon all those who benefited from the book fair from 1987 up to 2016, we're going to do another one next year, to come out and vote, set the example for your children of civic responsibility, but more importantly, let them know how important it is for young people to participate in the vote and to ensure that their government is working in their interest. If you don't vote, shame on you, because as Larry Ellison will tell you all the time, people fought and died for your right to vote.
Well,
never take it for granted.
Absolutely, Consul. I think, I don't know if you heard the piece early in the broadcast that we showed about the Reverse Freedom Ride and how the struggles that people had to go through just to have the right to vote, to be acknowledged, and that we take so many things for granted, right? And we don't hold people accountable. I mean, and we see of a similarity in the elected officials, the current occupant of the White House, and the same behaviors. And that's his interpretation of making America great again. And folks sitting back watching this, there's a history that tells folks, when they came for this one and that one and that one and no one did anything, and then they came for me and there was no one left, that's the road we're heading down again, folks. And I'm not sitting on the sideline. Like I said, they're getting me, it's going to be kicking and screaming.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Gentlemen.
Well, again, I just wanted to congratulate you for having a great program and raising a lot of issues that many people aren't even thinking about.
Right.
I always tell people that what you don't use, you can lose.
Right. Well, I put this
one
up.
time you could vote for your school committee in the city of Boston. Today, if you live in Boston, you live in the city, the only city of the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts where they cannot elect their school committee.
Wow.
And one of the rationales used in the late 80s to justify in appointed versus an elected school committee was that people simply did not come out and vote for the school committee. Well, people don't come out and vote for the city council. Should we do away with the legislative branch of government? Be very careful, people.
Right.
Very
Great point. Gentlemen, we're up against the clock. Council, I want to thank you. As I extended this to T. Michael, you're always welcome. MAMLIO is willing to give those hours to you. If you want to come in and host the show, let us know. We'll let you come in, and because what you talk about are very valid and needed points in our community, in our democracy. Gentlemen, thank you. We're up against the clock. We've got to take a break. And
thank you, and I'll take you up on that offer for next week.
Okay, you got it. And then
thank you.
All right. So, folks, you've been listening at the Round Table. We're going to take a break, and we'll